Andre Lamoga was devoured by his starving python. Anne Waltz was mauled by her 350-pound black bear, and Mark Vogle was bitten and killed by his pet black widow spider. Let's look at chilling cases where animals violently turned on their owners. Andre Lamoga and his starved python. Andre Lamoga, like many exotic pet enthusiasts, believed he could tame one of nature's most efficient predators, a large constrictor snake. The incident was directly tied to Andre Lamoga's improper care of the snake. For weeks, possibly months, Andre had failed in the most fundamental responsibility of pet ownership, feeding his snake. Whether this starvation was intentional cruelty or simply devastating negligence, the result remained the same: a desperate, hungry predator growing increasingly aggressive as its survival instincts kicked into overdrive. Large constrictors like pythons and boas are magnificent creatures, but they require consistent, proper care to remain manageable. These snakes typically require regular feeding of rodents or other small animals and secure enclosures to prevent such behavior. Andre's failure to meet even these basic requirements created a powder keg situation in his own home. The attack, when it finally came, was as predictable as it was horrific. Andre Lamoga was killed and eaten by his pet snake, which had been starved for an extended period and exhibited aggressive behavior due to its hunger. The snake's predatory instincts, honed by millions of years of evolution, took over completely. In its starved state, Andre was no longer seen as a caregiver or owner. He had become prey. The investigation revealed the tragic irony of the situation. The starvation led the snake to attack and consume its owner, an act consistent with the predatory instincts of large constrictors like pythons or boas when deprived of food. Andre's own neglect had essentially programmed his pet to see him as a meal rather than a master. Unlike Lamoga, the next victim wasn't neglecting their pet, they were caring for it. But that act of kindness would be the very thing that cost them their life. Anne Waltz and Teddy the black bear. Anne Waltz, a 37-year-old woman with a deep love for animals, had raised a black bear cub named Teddy from infancy. But on October 4, 2009, the illusion of domestic tranquility with a wild predator would be shattered in the most violent way possible. Anne Waltz was mauled to death by her 350-pound pet, black bear, named Teddy, while cleaning its cage. The scene was one of brutal chaos as Teddy, the bear she had bottle-fed and nurtured for years, turned on her with the savage instincts that no amount of human care could ever truly suppress. The tragic irony of Kelly's situation lay in the false sense of security her years of care had created. Waltz had raised Teddy from a cub, fostering a false sense of security. This dangerous misconception that a hand-raised wild animal is somehow domesticated would prove fatal. When she entered the cage without properly securing the massive predator, she unknowingly signed her own death warrant. The attack was swift and merciless. She entered the cage without securing the bear, and it attacked her. The sounds of the mauling were so horrific that they alerted neighbors, one of whom made a desperate attempt to save Kelly's life. A neighbor, hearing screams, shot and killed the bear to stop the attack, but Waltz could not be saved. The investigation into this tragedy revealed a disturbing pattern of regulatory violations that should have prevented this incident entirely. The Waltz family kept Teddy in a backyard cage, an environment unsuitable for a wild animal like a black bear, which can grow large and unpredictable. Even more damning was the discovery that the family's failure to maintain a valid exotic animal license violated Pennsylvania regulations, indicating negligence. Just like the Waltz family, the relatives of our next victim can't point fingers at strangers because their own choices paved the road to tragedy. The Hare family and Gypsy, the Burmese python. In July 2009, Cheyenne Hare was strangled to death by Gypsy, an 8.5-foot albino Burmese python owned by her mother, Jaren Hare, and her boyfriend, Charles Darnell, in Oxford, Florida. The image of this innocent child, sleeping peacefully in her crib, being attacked by a serpent that should never have had access to her living space, represents one of the most preventable tragedies in exotic pet ownership history. The snake itself was a victim of the adult's negligence as much as little Cheyenne was. The python, which weighed only 13.2 pounds, was significantly underweight for its size, indicating severe malnutrition that likely heightened its desperation and predatory instincts. This wasn't just poor pet care, it was systematic neglect that created a ticking time bomb in a home with a vulnerable child. The security measures for containing this powerful predator were laughably inadequate and criminally negligent. The snake escaped its aquarium, which was secured only with a quilt. For an 8.5-foot python capable of crushing the life out of a 2-year-old child. The sheer inadequacy of this containment containment system demonstrates either complete ignorance about the animal they were keeping or callous disregard for the safety of everyone in the home. The attack itself was as inevitable as it was tragic. The python wrapped around the child in her crib, killing her. The snake, driven by starvation and operating on pure predatory instinct, saw only prey, not a human child, not someone to be protected, just an opportunity to feed. Justice, when it finally came, reflected the severity of the adult's negligence. Hare and Darnell were convicted of third-degree murder, manslaughter, and child neglect, receiving 12-year prison sentences. The courts recognized what any reasonable person could see. This wasn't an accident or an act of God. It was the predictable result of criminal negligence. The next case involves a fatal attack by an animal so dangerous that the victim's own state had outlawed keeping it as a pet. Gerald Rushton and his red stag deer. In 2010, Gerald Rushton was gored and trampled to death by a 500-pound red stag deer he kept as a pet in his backyard in Texas. The sheer size and power of this animal should have been warning enough, but Gerald, like so many before him, believed that human will could overcome millions of years of evolutionary programming. Red stag deer aren't just large, they're specifically adapted for combat. These majestic creatures, native to the forests and mountains of Europe, possess antlers that can span several feet and serve as both weapons and symbols of dominance. Red stag deer are illegal to keep as pets in Texas due to their size, strength, and unpredictable behavior, especially during mating season when males become aggressive. Texas law recognized what Gerald apparently did not. These animals are fundamentally unsuitable for private ownership. The attack, when it came, demonstrated exactly why these regulations exist. During rutting season, male red stags transform from relatively docile herbivores into territorial fighting machines, driven by hormones and instincts that no amount of human interaction can suppress. The combination of sharp antlers, massive body weight, and aggressive territorial behavior created a perfect storm of violence in Gerald's backyard. Gerald's fundamental error lay in his assessment of both the animal and his own capabilities. Rushton's decision to keep a wild animal like a red stag deer in violation of Texas law was inherently risky. But beyond the legal violations, his setup was woefully inadequate for containing such a powerful creature. The backyard setting suggests inadequate space and safety measures for such a large animal, while Rushton likely underestimated the deer's strength and aggression. Just like Rushton, the next victim's fascination with exotic wildlife turned from passion to fatal obsession. Mark Vogle and his black widow spider. The discovery of Mark's body read like something from a horror novel rather than a news report. Mark Vogle was bitten and killed by his pet black widow spider, but this wasn't simply a case of a venomous bite. It was the beginning of a gruesome aftermath that revealed the extent of his dangerous lifestyle. Mark's apartment wasn't just a home, it was a poorly managed menagerie of deadly creatures. Vogle kept a collection of exotic animals, including spiders, lizards, and snakes, in his apartment. The sheer variety and danger level of his collection demonstrated either a profound fascination with deadly creatures or a complete disconnect from the reality of the risks he was taking. The aftermath of Mark's death was perhaps even more horrifying than the initial attack. After his death, his body was partially consumed by his neglected animals, which had been left without food following the fatal bite. When authorities finally discovered him, his body was covered in spiderwebs and surrounded by escaped animals, highlighting the extent of his hoarding and neglect. The black widow spider that killed Mark is one of nature's most efficient killers. These spiders possess neurotoxic venom that can be fatal to humans, especially when medical treatment is delayed or unavailable. In Mark's isolated lifestyle, a bite from his pet black widow meant certain death. There was no one to call for help, no one to provide emergency treatment, no one to even discover his body until it was far too late. Mark's lifestyle as a recluse amplified every risk factor associated with keeping dangerous animals. Vogle's lifestyle as a recluse and his hoarding of dangerous animals in a confined space created a hazardous environment. The combination of isolation, poor animal care, and inadequate safety measures created perfect conditions for disaster. The next victim treated his animal like family, more like a son than a pet, but that bond couldn't stop the fatal betrayal. Marius Els and Humphrey the hippopotamus. In 2005, Marius Els rescued a 5-month-old hippopotamus from a flood in the Free State Province. He named the hippo Humphrey and began what he believed would be a beautiful relationship between man and beast. Els treated it as a pet and described it as like a son, developing an emotional bond that would prove tragically misguided. For years, Els lived in what seemed like harmony with his massive pet. He built a special lake for Humphrey and was often seen riding on the hippo's back, feeding it apples and brushing its its teeth, as documented in viral videos. These images of man and hippo together became internet sensations, showing what appeared to be an impossible dream realized: the taming of one of Africa's most dangerous animals. Els's confidence in his relationship with Humphrey was absolute and ultimately fatal. Despite mounting evidence that his pet was becoming increasingly dangerous, Els insisted Humphrey was tame, stating, "I trust him with my heart that he will not harm anybody." This declaration would prove to be his final, tragic miscalculation. The warning signs were there for anyone willing to see them. Humphrey had previously shown aggression, killing calves on Els's farm, chasing golfers, and attacking canoeists who were saved when Els lured Humphrey away with an apple. Each incident should have been a wake-up call, but Els's emotional attachment to the animal blinded him to the mounting danger. The attack, when it finally came, was as brutal as it was predictable. On November 12, 2011, Humphrey, then 6 years old and weighing over 2,600 lbs, attacked Els on the banks of the Vogle River. The violence was extreme and methodical. Humphrey bit Els multiple times, dragged him into the water, and left his mutilated body submerged. Paramedics found Els with severe bite wounds, and he was declared dead at the scene. The next entry involves a trained specialist, yet even her expertise couldn't protect her from the animal she knew so well: Cynthia Lee Gamble and her Bengal tiger. On August 28, 2001, Cynthia Lee Gamble, a 52-year-old animal enthusiast, was found dead near the cage of her 500-pound Bengal tiger at her Center for Endangered Cats. The irony was as tragic as it was predictable. A woman who dedicated her life to protecting these magnificent creatures became their victim through her own inadequate safety protocols. Cynthia's facility was more than just a home for exotic animals. It was a collection of nature's most efficient killers. Gamble cared for multiple tigers and other exotic animals, including lions and cheetahs. The sheer firepower of predatory capability housed in one location would have challenged even the most professional facilities, yet Cynthia operated with safety measures that proved fatally inadequate. The attack occurred during what should have been a routine interaction, the kind of daily activity that exotic animal facilities perform thousands of times without incident. She was mauled by the tiger, likely while feeding or interacting with it, and her body was discovered by a friend. The Bengal tiger, following instincts honed by millions of years of evolution, saw opportunity and acted with the swift, lethal efficiency that makes these animals apex predators. The warning signs had been present for years before Cynthia's death. The facility had prior issues, including a 1997 incident where a tiger bit a volunteer's arm, and citations from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources for inadequate fencing and sanitation. These violations weren't minor infractions. They were fundamental safety failures that created conditions where tragedy was inevitable. Cynthia's passion for exotic animals led her to operate a facility without adequate safety protocols. Her history of regulatory violations and lack of robust safeguards for handling apex predators like tigers contributed to the fatal attack, highlighting the risks of private exotic animal ownership even when driven by seemingly noble conservation motives. The next victim's animal was a birthday gift from her husband, but sentimentality didn't save her from what came next: Pam Weaver and her pet camel. On October 12, 2010, Pam Weaver, a 60-year-old from Wichita, Kansas, was killed by her pet camel, a 150-kilo male, given as a birthday gift by her husband. The image of a birthday gift turning into a killer reads like dark satire, but the reality was far more complex and tragic than any fiction could capture. This wasn't a case of sudden, unpredictable aggression. The camel had been displaying warning signs that should have prompted immediate action. The camel, known for erratic behavior, had chased Weaver's pet goats and knocked her down previously. These incidents weren't isolated quirks of personality, they were clear indicators of an animal that was unpredictable, aggressive, and potentially dangerous. The final attack was both brutal and deeply disturbing in its nature. During the incident, Weaver was in the camel's pen when it knocked her down and attempted to mate with her, causing suffocation. This wasn't predatory behavior or territorial aggression, it was sexual behavior from a powerful animal that couldn't distinguish between appropriate and inappropriate targets, making it perhaps even more tragic than a straightforward attack. The discovery of Pam's body painted a grim picture of those final moments. A farm worker found her unresponsive, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. The speed with which the situation deteriorated from routine animal interaction to fatal attack underscores just how quickly exotic pet situations can spiral out of control. Law enforcement's investigation revealed a pattern that made the tragedy even more preventable. The Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office confirmed the camel's aggressive history, and it was euthanized. The fact that authorities were already aware of the animal's behavioral problems raises serious questions about why more decisive action hadn't been taken earlier. This victim didn't fall to a single animal. They were taken down in a chillingly coordinated assault by their own pack. Sandra Pioves and her wolf dog pack. In July 2006, Sandra Pioves, a 50-year-old from Salem Township, Pennsylvania, was found dead in an enclosure with her 9 wolf-dog hybrids. The scene that greeted investigators was one of primitive savagery, a pack of animals that had reverted to their most basic instincts, treating their caregiver as prey rather than pack leader. The attack itself demonstrated the pack mentality that makes wolf-dog hybrids particularly dangerous. The animals, a mix of wolves and domestic dogs, attacked her, inflicting severe claw and bite wounds that caused fatal blood loss. This wasn't a single animal acting out of desperation or fear. This was coordinated pack behavior, multiple animals working together to bring down what they perceived as prey. The gruesome aftermath revealed just how completely Sandra's animals had abandoned any recognition of her as their caregiver. Her body was partially eaten. The image of domestic pets consuming their owner represents one of the most fundamental betrayals possible in the human-animal relationship, demonstrating that hybrid vigor can sometimes mean hybrid danger. The community's helplessness in the face of the attack highlighted how quickly these situations can spiral beyond human control. Neighbors heard screams but couldn't intervene in time. The sounds of the attack, a human being torn apart by a pack of wolf dogs, must have been among the most terrifying sounds imaginable, yet there was nothing bystanders could do to stop the carnage. Even wildlife officials recognized the inherent problems with Sandra's collection. The Pennsylvania Game Commission noted prior warnings about the hybrid's unpredictable nature. These weren't surprise observations discovered after the fact. They were known issues that had been identified before the tragedy occurred, making Sandra's death even more preventable. The aftermath was swift and decisive. The animals were euthanized due to their aggression and lack of suitable relocation options. Once wolf-dog hybrids have killed and eaten a human being, there's no rehabilitation possible, no sanctuary willing to take them, no future except death. Just like Sandra, the next victim was attacked by the very pet they had raised and cared for. Brenda Guerrero and Scarface the pitbull. On January 17, 2017, Brenda Guerrero, a 52-year-old from Tampa, Florida, was fatally mauled by her pit bull, Scarface, in her backyard while attempting to put a sweater on him. The mundane nature of the trigger makes this case particularly heartbreaking. Brenda was simply trying to care for her dog, but her good intentions would prove fatal. The incident revealed how quickly a routine pet interaction can transform into a life-threatening emergency. The act likely caused stress, triggering the attack. For reasons that may never be fully understood, Scarface perceived the sweater as a threat or source of extreme discomfort, responding with the kind of explosive aggression that makes certain dog breeds particularly dangerous in domestic settings. The attack's violence extended beyond just Brenda, demonstrating how quickly these situations can spiral out of control. Her husband, Ismael Guerrero, and their son were bitten while attempting to intervene. The family's desperate attempts to save Brenda put them in harm's way, showing how a single dog's aggression can threaten multiple family members in a matter of moments. The community response was immediate, but ultimately insufficient to save Brenda's life. Neighbors called 911, and Hillsborough County Animal Control subdued Scarface with a taser. Despite the quick response from both neighbors and authorities, Brenda was pronounced dead at the scene, and Scarface was euthanized. The tragedy highlighted a critical gap in many pet owners' understanding of canine psychology. Guerrero's attempt to dress Scarface suggests a lack of awareness of canine stress signals. Many dogs, particularly powerful breeds like pitbulls, can become extremely stressed when forced into clothing or restraints, but owners often don't recognize the warning signs until it's too late. Not even the desperate efforts of her son and husband could save the next victim from the violent onslaught of the family pets. Susan Shaw and 2 family pit bulls. On August 29, 2016, Susan Shaw, 60 years old, was mauled to death by 2 family pit bulls at her home in the 31900 block of Black Widow Drive, Conifer, Colorado. The attack occurred around 7 p.m. in what should have been the safety of her own garage doorway, transforming a familiar space into a scene of unimaginable violence. The severity of Susan's injuries painted a picture of an absolutely ferocious attack. Susan suffered severe injuries, particularly to her face, neck, arms, and legs, with her carotid artery severed, leading to her death at the scene. The precision with which the dogs targeted vital areas suggests either incredible unluck or the kind of sustained, focused aggression that makes these attacks so devastating. The family's attempts to save Susan demonstrated both courage and the helplessness that accompanies such attacks. Her son, Richard Shaw, was injured while attempting to intervene, sustaining non-life-threatening bite wounds to his arm. He was treated and released from Swedish Medical Center in Inglewood, but his mother could not be saved. The dogs involved weren't strangers dogs or recently acquired animals. They were long-term family members with a complex history. The two dogs were described as terrier pitbull mixes, one white and brown and the other nearly all black. They were family pets, with one previously owned by Susan's late husband and the other by Richard, who cared for both after his father's death in July 2016. The timing of the attack, just a month after the patriarch's death, raises questions about how changes in family dynamics might affect animal behavior. The emergency response revealed the chaos and desperation of the scene. Jefferson County Sheriff's deputies responded to a frantic 911 call from Richard. First responders found Susan barely conscious and applied a tourniquet, but she could not be saved. A medical helicopter was called, but later cancelled due to her death. It took approximately 30 minutes to contain the dogs, which were found loose on a deck. The investigation revealed a troubling history that should have served as a warning. In 2008, Richard received a warning citation from Animal Control after a neighbor reported the dogs being loose and aggressive, indicating a history of concerning behavior. This prior incident suggests that the dog's potential for aggression had been documented years before the fatal attack. Unlike most cases we've seen, this next one is almost too shocking to believe, given the harmless image of the animals involved. Janet Veal and her cats. Janet Veal, 56 years old, was found dead in her home in Ringwood, Hampshire, UK in 2013. Her body was partially eaten by her pet cats after her death. This wasn't a case of feline aggression toward a living human, but rather a stark demonstration of what happens when domestic animals are left without care and face starvation. The circumstances of Janet's death were natural, but the aftermath was anything but normal. Janet's death was not caused by the cats. She died of natural causes, likely a heart condition, though the exact cause was not specified. After her death, her numerous cats, left without food or care, resorted to scavenging her body. The discovery painted a gruesome picture of survival instincts overriding any loyalty or affection the cats might have felt toward their owner. The scene that greeted investigators was one of macabre desperation. The scene was described as gruesome, with police discovering her remains in a state of partial consumption. The cats, driven by hunger and operating on pure survival instinct, had done what desperate animals do. They had fed on the only available source of sustenance. Janet's lifestyle contributed significantly to the tragic aftermath of her death. Janet owned multiple cats, which were described as hungry and neglected following her death. The sheer number of cats suggests possible hoarding tendencies, which often correlate with inadequate care even when the owner is alive. The isolation factor played a crucial role in allowing this situation to develop unchecked. Janet's death left her cats without care, likely for days or weeks, leading to extreme hunger and scavenging behavior. No one checked on the animals, leaving them in a desperate state, highlighting the importance of having emergency care arrangements for pets. This next case may be the most heartbreaking of all because the victim never stood a chance. Mia Riley and two Rottweilers. On February 12, 2023, Mia Riley, a 5-week-old infant, was killed by two Rottweilers in Memphis, Tennessee, USA. The image of a tiny baby, helpless in her cradle, being attacked by dogs weighing more than 10 times her body weight, represents one of the most tragic scenarios possible in human-animal interactions. The attack demonstrated the incredible fragility of infant life when confronted with large, powerful animals. Mia was sleeping in her cradle when the two family Rottweilers attacked her, inflicting major skull trauma and internal bleeding. The fact that she was sleeping, completely defenseless and unaware, makes this tragedy even more heartbreaking. The severity of the injuries reflected the massive size and strength differential between the infant and her attackers. She was pronounced dead at the scene due to the severity of her injuries. For a 5-week-old baby, any aggressive contact with a full-grown Rottweiler would likely prove fatal, regardless of medical intervention. The investigation into this tragedy revealed fundamental failures in protecting the most vulnerable member of the household. The source highlights a failure to supervise or secure the dogs around a vulnerable infant as a significant factor. The dog's access to the baby's sleeping area represents a catastrophic breach of basic safety protocols. Just like Mia Riley, the next victim was completely defenseless in the face of the attack. Jaden Pollard and an Australian cattle dog. In 2020, Jaden Pollard, a 2-year-old boy, was killed by the family's Australian cattle dog in Muswell Brook, New South Wales, Australia. The attack represented a particularly tragic example of how working dog instincts can translate into dangerous behavior when not properly channeled and controlled. The attack itself demonstrated how quickly routine family life can transform into tragedy when powerful animals are involved. Jaden was attacked by the family's cattle dog, suffering fatal injuries, likely to the head or neck. He was rushed to a hospital but succumbed to his injuries. Despite Despite what was presumably immediate medical attention, the injuries proved too severe for a toddler's fragile body to survive. Australian cattle dogs present unique challenges as family pets due to their breeding and instincts. The dog was an Australian cattle dog, a breed known for its herding instincts and high energy. These dogs were specifically bred to control large, powerful livestock through nipping, chasing, and physical intimidation, behaviors that can prove deadly when directed towards small children. The incident highlighted critical gaps in understanding working breed behavior in family settings. The source suggests that a lack of supervision or training likely allowed the dog to attack the child. Australian cattle dogs are intelligent and energetic, but can be nippy or aggressive if not properly trained, especially around fast-moving children who may trigger their herding instincts. The tragedy occurred in what should have been a safe, familiar environment. The incident likely occurred in a home or yard setting, indicating the dog was not adequately secured or monitored around the toddler. This suggests that the family may not have fully understood the risks posed by their working breed dog around their young child. At the same age as Pollard, the next victim was another innocent with no means to fight back. Talon Peters and a bull Arab. In 2021, Talon Peters, a 2-year-old boy, was mauled to death by the family's bull Arab pig hunting dog in Maxville, New South Wales, Australia. The breed name itself, bull Arab, suggests the power and aggression that these dogs were specifically developed to possess for hunting some of Australia's most dangerous wild game. The attack on Talon was devastating in its intensity and surgical precision. Talon was attacked by the dog, sustaining severe injuries that led to internal bleeding. He underwent emergency surgery, but died from his injuries. The fact that emergency surgery couldn't save him speaks to the incredible damage that a large hunting dog can inflict on a small child's body. Bull Arabs represent one of the most dangerous dog breeds to keep in family settings due to their specific breeding purpose. The bull Arab is a large, powerful breed developed in Australia for pig hunting, known for its strength and prey drive. These dogs were created to hunt wild boars, animals that can weigh hundreds of pounds and possess deadly tusks. A dog bred for such work inevitably carries that capacity for violence into domestic settings. The attack environment suggests inadequate containment and supervision protocols. The attack occurred in a family setting, likely at home or in a yard. The fact that a toddler could be alone with such a powerful hunting dog represents a fundamental failure in understanding the risks posed by the animal. The tragedy highlighted the inappropriate nature of keeping hunting breeds as family pets. The source notes that keeping a dog bred for hunting without proper control around a child was a significant factor. Bull Arabs are not typically family pets due to their high prey drive and strength, making them unsuitable for households with young children without rigorous training and containment. Like this video, click on the card showing on your screen for more.